Good afternoon and welcome to the Manila Times' coverage of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s State of the Nation address. Uh, his speech later this afternoon comes at a very interesting time for the country and for the world. We have issues here that are particularly fraught at the moment, and I'm referring to China and inflation. And there are also developments that have just happened just this day that will have a big impact on how the Philippines will be like over the next few years. So we've gathered a distinguished panel of guests today to discuss what to expect from the president later this afternoon, what to expect after the SONA, and we will also be touching on things that, like I said, happened over the past few days and today. With us is we have two former cabinet secretaries with us. Across me is Dr. William Dar, who was Agriculture Secretary under the Duterte administration. Next to me is the former Defense Secretary, former Senator Orly Mercado. He was Defense Secretary under
Yeah.
Joseph Estrada and Dr. Lloyd Bautista. Welcome to the Manila Times, gentlemen. It's Mr. Marcos's SONA, his third, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been 2 years since he assumed the presidency. Um, we've had very little details about what he's actually going to say, except the usual press releases from the palace. And so I'd like to pick your brains as to what you expect him or what you want him to say in an hour, sir.
Well, actually, it's very important to frame it. The way I look at it is that I always tell my students there are three words that if you put them together, they give you a chance to really broaden your perspective. And that is hindsight, insight, and foresight. Hindsight, nakagawalayan, ugali na inaantay natin na mayroong State of the Nation address. And the President is given a chance to explain what has transpired in the past year, what were his accomplishments, and also, very importantly, and something I think we have missed most of the time, is the legislative program or the requirements. The reason why you're giving them a view of what you'll be able to achieve, it is actually a report. And like in any corporation, for example, the president provides us a list of things that have been done. But what is needed legislatively is in that agenda. Now, to a great extent, it is also an opportunity to focus on the strategic view of many of the problems we face now. So I'll leave it at that as of the moment.
Okay. Doc Lloyd?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. So at this point in time, I'll just try to remember some data that I have in mind. So our economy actually grew when the time President Marcos assumed office by more than 7% in 2022. It went
Yes.
down to about 5.6%. And moving
5.5 last year.
forward, Asian Development Bank predicted that our economy will grow by 6% this year, and come next year is going to be 6.2%. You might not agree with me, but we have actually eased inflation. From as high about 7.5% last year, now it's just about 3.8%. So we've actually met some of these macroeconomic indicators. Unemployment also went down from 6% to 4%. In addition to that, our debt to GDP ratio went down from 63% to 60%. So what I'm telling you is that as far as macroeconomic fundamentals are concerned, nandoon siya. It's okay. Now, the difficulty, sirs, is that being translated on the ground. Do people see that? Do people feel that? That, I think, is what the president needs to address right now. Because at this point in time, it's either we're failing how to communicate it to the public, or it seems that uh, people don't really see the tangible results of many of the things that the president has done. I'll give you one example. As far as the president going out of the country, and he got criticized for that, but one of the things that we need to do to actually generate more jobs is foreign direct investments. Just recently, SM Investment came up with a public offering of shares of stocks, 2 billion pesos, wiped out. There were so many buyers, and I think because we reflect so well in the international market right now. But again, the challenge always of any administration is how many of these programs and the legislative agenda that the dear senator mentioned can actually be translated to the daily grind of Filipinos. And I think this SONA, the president has to communicate that well. The ability to communicate that many of the things that we're doing is going to impact on their lives.
Okay. Sir?
Yeah, Lloyd has mentioned already that while we grow economically 6-7% GDP growth, much of this has to be felt below. So let's take the case for agriculture and food security, where I have some basic knowledge. Uh, Food inflation continues to be a part of, this inflationary tendencies that is happening. Of course, we can see some improvements lately, but since the beginning, when they started with this administration, ay mataas na mataas yung inflation, much more food inflation contribution to that. And this is so this year. And we hope that this is reflected by the level of productivity of Philippine agriculture. Meaning, we have really to see whether the president would address how can we boost or increase productivity levels of the various commodity industries, because what's happening really is that the supply is not in sync with the demand. And again, the other challenge would be the population growth, obtaining very high population growth. And while the growth of agriculture has been very anemic for the last 10-15 years, maybe about 2% annually. So there's a lot to do, and the president must address this because it has something to do with inflation, it has something to do with productivity, it has something to do also with the income of the farmers doing the, food production for every Filipino.
Yeah. That's very interesting, because looking at the reactions to the Man on the Street video that we produced, you spoke about investments generated by his visits. May mga comments doon na asa na yung mga projects na itinayo. Yun din yung, and then we go to the food situation. Of course, I think it was a campaign promise to lower rice prices to 20 pesos per kilo. Mahirap talagang minadaanan ako kaninang market na yung sinandoming na special, I think was 62.
Well,
So malayo yun. I know that the SONA normally goes for the broad brush strokes. So yung mga major wishes, he has a list of But low-hanging fruits. If there were low-hanging fruits that the president should do, like I might be wrong here, but I remember nung panahon ni Pinoy, di ba, Wang was announced during a SONA. Things like that na para makita lang ng mga tao na medyo nagagawa tayo. There's a piece of good news right now. The PSA just reported today that poverty has dropped to 15.1% from 18 something nung 2021. So that's a nice thing to know. But yun nga, ang sinasabi ng mga tao, hindi ko na malayo sa bituka ko yung yung 23 trillion in investments or 15% poverty rate, malayo ano, hindi ko na-feel yan eh. So what do you think the president should be doing, or maybe he can announce it
Hindi
later?
maliit na bagay yan. Actually, worldwide, nakikita natin mayroong problema ang democracies, open markets. Countries that are not ruled by one parties are now buffeted by forces who are populist, very popular ang kanilang appeal, largely because of the fact that they feel not only the pangs of higher prices, but they know that there are people at the top tier of the population who are really, wallowing in money. You're talking about billions already. Smart asses who are able to scam others can easily become multi-billionaires. And, it's really frustrating when they think about it. It's also the fact that they feel their efforts are not being given due respect and credit. And this is I think what explains sometimes the reasons why in politics we get polarized with people who are either in or out. Sabi nga ni Farid Zakaria, it's no longer capitalism versus communism or socialism. It's whether you're in or you're of an open or a closed system. So it's a question of openness. How much do you open? When you open, do you address the problem of immigration? How do you address the problems of labor? These are issues that are very critical when you come to think of it.
Yeah, but yun nga, for the man on the street, ano sa tingin mo madaling pwedeng i-anunsyo ng Pangulo na, hey, gumaganda ang buhay natin ngayon, and para gumanda pa lalo, itong gagawin natin.
So I'll add with what Senator Mercado said. I think there's going to be 5 main issues that's going to perhaps come out in this State of the Nation address. One is the elephant in the room is inflation, and we're talking of basic commodities, rice, food. The data shows that poor household, more than 60% of their expense goes to food.
Food, yes.
So if we can address that, that's going to have tremendous impact to many households. The second would be jobs.
Mhm.
So the president has been going out to create more jobs. And I think jobs that are quality jobs, not the contractual jobs. So we need more manufacturing first. This is the problem. Our capital markets is very small.
Yes.
And among academics, we know that the market is very small and you need new players to come in to provide money in the market. The third would be transportation. We are actually spending 6% of our GDP in transportation. Those are the daily grind that Filipinos experience. You said about Wang Wang. I think Wang Wang drives people really with such anger is because of the daily traffic that they have to encounter. The fourth, which I think we all know, is public safety and public security. The press, which the past administration admittedly was very strong at. People being able to go to their home safely. At the back of your head, you know that your kids would not be kidnapped. Those things matter a lot to Filipinos. And finally, I think everybody here will agree with me, territorial defense. China, the China issue, South China Sea, Taiwan Strait. These, I think, are the 5 main issues that will come out in the State of the Nation address. And low-hanging fruits. I heard that the president is a likable person, very charismatic. He has no mean bones in him. I think what the Filipinos want to see in the president is the president interacting, the empathy of a leader, yung malasakit, no? I think that is what people would want the president to exude in the coming 3 years.
Something more on the lines of former President Duterte was...
But not only former President Duterte, but all presidents. So there is the technical side of leading. But at the end, as a president, and I think the reason why our constitution limited the 6 years of the presidency is that somehow you are able to relate to your constituents, to the citizens, not only as a technocrat, but also as a father,
Okay.
as a leader of the nation. And you have to show that empathy and love. Because you don't need to run the next term. And the
Yes.
expectation is for you to go out of your way and really show that love and empathy to your people.
Sir?
Yeah, sa agrikultura naman, Arnold, na-mention ko na kanina yung boosting productivity.
Yes.
Because that's the one major strategy to have enough food production. Because if you don't have really supply, then you will have always the last resort of bringing in food
Imports,
from
yes.
other countries. That has been a balancing act all these years. And the president has to take consideration of the big challenges in agriculture. Let me cite a good number of this. For example, economies of scale is no longer present.
Yes.
Small land holdings dominate the agricultural landscape in the country
Which is why
today.
productivity is
So
down.
productivity is down. And what would be the way to now have economies of scale? One way, which we started before and the administration is continuing today, is the farm clustering and consolidation. This is consolidating production operations, say in one commodity industry in rice, you have a group of 100 farmers tilling 100 hectares, so that this is the platform with which government will now give the assistance, effectively, because a small farmer cannot use the best of technologies today. He cannot use or buy tractors or the
Yes.
drones, everything that would modernize farming, for example. So that's one key big challenge for Philippine agriculture is the economies of scale. We have to go to that level. We need to have legislative support as well for Philippine agriculture. One area would be the land retention limit. Today, every person can only have 5 hectares.
Yes.
But, this has really come to the point that the outcome is really low productivity. So what would be that level? There is a bill filed in Congress having a retention level of 24 hectares per individual. Okay, the third factor would be to entice more private sector to come in and invest in agriculture. And we see that when you have to handle energy costs, energy cost is one of the big problems, not only for other sectors, but as well as in agriculture. Ease of doing business, while we have laws related to that, is still down the line to LGUs, doing business is so cumbersome. So many things of this sort. Maybe we have to unleash the credit program with which we can really encourage the private sector to invest more in Philippine agriculture.
Okay. But again, this is all hinged more or less. The president will say, this is what we need to do. But then you have to have Congress approve things and move things forward. And then let's not talk about the actual implementation by by government and agencies yet. So Congress, what do you think about our current Congress now? Are they cooperating or are they holding back?
Tayo nagtuturo, meron tayong syllabus, meron tayong in-explain natin kung ano expectations, we even run a survey. What are your expectations of the course? But you have to submit, you have to do things at a certain period of time.
Okay.
Anong mga bagay pagpalagay natin na sinasabing legislative, part of the legislative agenda, na isa, dalawa, 3 beses nang sinasabi, hindi pa pumapasa. Yung mga complex problems, alam mo, nanggaling din ako sa legislative branch. Naku, Diyos ko, pagdating ng mga consolidation, palagay natin Magna Carta or something that consolidates many policies that have to be updated already because they have been, like a national land use policy is one of my favorite examples. Iba-ibang presidente na yan, binabanggit yan, hanggang ngayon hindi na
Hindi pa rin.
binabanggit. And that is required. Our security issues, a National Defense Act, upgrading of the 1935 National Defense Act is necessary because everything else can be upended by problems of our mishandling. When does it end? It ends on the issue of being able to articulate the national interests. We have to agree on our national interests. China has been very clear about it. Our core interest, sabi ng China, Tibet is ours, Taiwan is ours, South China Sea is ours. Non-negotiable. Pwede ba natin sabihin na okay na yan? O kaya mag-usap tayo, we'll go around, we can try to go around this claim? Because what will happen is that we will lose our entire maritime resources because our exclusive economic zone will suddenly vanish. And that's what's being done to us. We are forced, little by little, to accept certain conditions. Masanay na kayo, kami may hawak kayo nito. And poor as a country as we are, we have to really assert our presence. Now, we are not, the communication here is very important. Are we being given a choice between war and surrender, or is that a false dichotomy? Are there many things that we can do in between? I submit that has to be articulated and thoroughly discussed for us to be able to find out what our core national interests are, where are they aligned with other countries who are supposed to help us, and where are we going to draw a red line and say we are willing to sing ang mamatay ng dahil sa iyo, and that is a reality.
Okay. Do you think the president has properly articulated that over the last couple of years?
Yeah. Can I respond also
Sure.
with that? The thing about legislative agenda is it has to be based on a certain philosophy, or in fact, I was thinking Bagong Pilipinas should be a strong handle on how we want to come up with legislation that supports a certain philosophical agenda. You know, the president's father came up with the Filipino ideology. And the president's father had the top political scientists, Onofre Corpus, Adrian Cristobal. They're the ones that crafted that vision of what the Philippines is for the next 5 or 10 years. Now, the Bagong Pilipinas has to be communicated by the president himself. He has to express what is this transformation he's talking about. And with that, legislators will toe the line. As what the senator said, is it national security interest? Is it a behavioral transformation? Is it Filipinos, how were Filipinos before and how we want to become in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
He's going to mention Bagong Pilipinas in his State of the Nation address. But would that actually resonate to the legislature? What it means, what it stands for, what is the ideology behind it?
Yeah, relatedly, mention has to be made. I mean, tapping the legislation to make it possible for Bagong Pilipinas to really grow and be part of the whole, way of life, the philosophy of, the country. For example, in agriculture, nasabi na rin ni Ka-Orly kanina na mas maraming mga populists na even from my point of view sa mga ating mga politicians, mga legislators, and even outside the halls of Congress, still guided by heavy protectionism vis-a-vis a world that is opening up, a world that would consider to some extent already liberalization.
Yeah.
So this bagong Pilipinas will have to articulate which way are we going to do? I mean, are we going to go? Is it what degree of liberalization shall we pursue? So that everything you do can be translated now into a strategic plan for all the commodity industries in agriculture. For example, I was telling Lloyd kanina, let's identify those commodity industries in agriculture that we have the competitive edge that will provide the basic food security possible for the country and heavily develop and grow those commodity industries. But also identify other commodity industries that we don't have that competitive advantage. So we really have to bring them from other countries. So we be leaders, global leaders at that, for those commodities that we have the competitive edge. So again, this new bagong Pilipinas will really have to the president has to drum up that this is the way we should take this country to the next level.
Yeah. Okay. We agree that the Marcos government has a message that it wants to deliver, a vision that it wants to deliver. But it seems there is a communication issue here that needs to be addressed. You have been a communicator for decades. You know how things should be communicated best. Anong kailangan gawin ng ano ngayon? Is it a problem with the PCO
No, it's not a matter of what to. It's not a question of information and data. In fact, in this fourth industrial revolution, our problem is too much or overload of data that we really need critical thinking. We need good analysis. We need skills to create things with others, collaboration, and we need the creativity to do it. So what I'm trying to say is that the world is changing and changing so fast that we have to take into consideration many things. Who is going to be, any change or reform produces friction because it produces movement, produces friction, friction produces pain. The question is the pain being felt by everybody? Or do the ones at the bottom of the population feel that they're the ones who are going to suffer? The changes that have been proposed, for example, for the reform on jeepneys is correct. But the jeepney drivers feel they're the ones who are going to suffer most.
Yes.
Ganon din sa farmers, ganon din sa mga estudyante, etc. Napakaraming ano eh. Yun ang assignment ng communication. It's not who can come up with press releases, conduct or kasi sa akin, ang importante, there is a backlash against globalization. And this is a reality. Now, some people say you cannot push back globalization. It's an event that happens to the entire world. Pero globalization means access to others or opening up of capital, goods, trade, labor. Pagdating sa labor, may problema malaki. Yung mga bansa na nangangailangan ng labor, alam nila, kailangan nila ng tao. The Americans, the Europeans, etc., they know they need people to man their factories and to produce agricultural products. But they look different, their skin is different, their religion is different, etc. May problema tayo yan. Doon na pupunta yung energy natin. So, these are all very complex problems to deal with. But we have to manage those that are being exacerbated by people taking advantage of this particular debate.
Yes, sir.
So, in addition to what the senator said, I think I will describe a State of the Nation address. In the private sector, we call that as a town hall meeting. So the CEO would express his vision, and whether or not the vision is being achieved as you go through every year. Now, town hall meeting, aside from disclosing the true state of the company, it's also sort of a pep rally to inspire people, to
Yes.
mobilize people. And in fact, the difficulty right now is we have so many economic plans right now. We have the Philippine Development Plan, Ambition 2040, which fortunately, from one president to another, from Pinoy to Duterte
Remains
to
the same.
now, which was actually followed. And the plan is to reduce poverty from as high as 18% to less than 1%, 0.6% of our population by 2040. Increase the per capita income of every Filipino from 3,500 US dollars to 20,000 US dollars. And perhaps we can be a middle income country like Malaysia and even Singapore by 2040. So the road ahead is very clear for everybody. And the president has to, you know, present that vision and make that vision understandable for everyone. Executives, the cabinet secretaries, are the ones tasked to make that vision into a reality. It's not the job of the president to do the day-to-day programming. It's the president who just sets the message, sets the vision, and the cabinet secretaries are the ones to push that vision into reality. Now, the question is, if you look at all the cabinet portfolio, have they actually translated what the president have in mind on the ground? That's the problem right now.
Would you
So-
identify?
I think the secretary is in a better position to answer that.
Related again to that, so it's not only communication, proper communication, but action on the ground by the machinery of government. In the case of agriculture and food, while strategies have been there, clustering farms, cooperatives development as a way to really encourage more cooperativism or group action. Are we having that scale of operations today? We have to ask those questions of actions on the ground because it matters whether the budget given by government, which is increasing by the way, that's one good thing. Because Philippine agriculture has been neglected all these last 50 years, underdeveloped and underfunded by both government and the private sector. So with the increasing budget now, we should have also efficient machinery, guided by the principles of good governance and everything. So we should have more farms that have to be clustered or consolidated. We should have more farmers associations or farmers cooperatives to be organized so that again the collective way of doing things can be properly done and pursued relentlessly. Then again, private sector enticement because private sector has to leap up again in prosperity. When there are clustered farms, they can partner with them and for them to have economies of scale and grow their business. So that's another thing to highlight. The president in his SONA must give the go signal. I mean, the direction, strong direction, that yes, we have now plans, we have now strategies in place, programs and projects. It's now the delivery and deliver it. That's why I was mentioning earlier about providing the right credit program, say by Land Bank of the Philippines, which now they have. I just had meeting last week with them. They have this Agri-Censo credit program for agriculture with an interest of 5 to 6% annually. So that's affordable. And hoping that now the private sector, a good number of private sector are now discussing with Land Bank to tap on this possibility because this is one way for them to be given more capital to partner with clustered farmers and use the best of technologies possible. At the end of the day, the market will be now the private sector.
Would you think, because you raised up the that the world has changed. It's an internet age where somebody posts something right this minute and 30 seconds later, it's been viewed by a million people. So, ganun ba, siguro ganun ba yung problema natin? Because we know inertia is, the bureaucracy is, getting the bureaucracy to move is, is an issue. So, we have to be more agile, to use a buzzword right now.
Obviously, the problem talaga we create bigger offices and new offices to solve a problem. But with that comes the burden of really making them efficient. But, you know, the merit system has been corroded through the years. No? So, ang nangyayari dito, hindi mo kakayahan kung hindi we are putting people who are given very important tasks, but they don't have the capacity. And it's so difficult. And then there is also an attitude that we put so many checks and balances because we assume that people who enter government are there to enrich themselves or are going to be corrupt. And that also brings us, we drag our feet on that. These are part of the other problems that we have to take into consideration.
So I think for the past 3 years, people were tolerant that the president was trying to, find his way around. But subsequent, now that you have the midterm, I think people are expecting more. One of that is we really need good implementation on the ground. Kailangan natin yung mga bastonero already, to accelerate our development. I mean, to be honest with you, the percentage of time that we do on meetings, all of this in the cabinet, has to transcend beyond that already. And we really need good individuals. Be on the ground. Do not travel too much abroad. I know several secretaries who've been traveling abroad several times already. It's now time that you are on the ground, like what the Secretary Dar did in the agriculture. You find this person always on the ground. We need more people like that. And that will actually seal the legacy of the president.
Would you want to venture a particular area where we need more people on the ground?
4 areas: agriculture, PNP, and the military, transportation, and tourism. Those 4 areas.
Now, Arnold, one complexity in Philippine agriculture, Kaorly knows this, that there has been a devolution of functions, including
Yun nga.
health.
To the
Agriculture
LGUs.
extension has been devolved to the local government
Yes.
units. So, for agriculture and food security, it's a partnership between the national government, which is represented by the Department of Agriculture, and that of the local governments. So, how will this partnership move forward? The national government, DA, does what I call the steering role. Gives the direction, strategic way forward, while the local government units, provincial, municipal, will do what we call the rowing role, the hard work. And so the president in this SONA must see to it to direct now LGUs to strongly partner with the DA and do their job as well as food security SARS at their own level, provincial and municipal. Otherwise, when there are problems, they always blame Department of Agriculture.
2 issues that I'd like to tackle that we haven't really, given that you all are experts or have touched on that issue. China. You were supposed to be a special envoy to China during the time of Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. What do we have to do about China? Or how do we address the China issue?
You cannot talk about China alone without looking at the entire international order that is now in a flux and changing. Napaka-importante yung pananaw yan na hindi lang China, Of course, sabi nga, meron to see this trap yan eh. There rising China, which we were hoping, most people were hoping would be peaceful, and take their place. Because at the end, wala na yung Cold War. Wala na yung bipolar competition between free market economies and economies that are controlled by the state. Pero, you have a situation wherein things have moved so fast. So now we see that the rise of China is no longer that peaceful. But we are all prisoners, to quote Kaplan, I think, prisoners of geography. Meron tayong pwedeng gawin, meron tayong hindi pwedeng gawin. Dahil sa nandito tayo eh. And we unfortunately we are too close to Taiwan and to China in such a manner that they claim our entire maritime resources. So that is something that has to be dealt with.
So are we doing the right thing now? Yung balita ngayon eh, we've come to a sort of accommodations for the resupply missions nung
Mga
Tama.
maliliit na bagay yan eh. Yung kami, yung maliit na contribution namin, dumating yung panahon namin, was nagsadsad tayo. Actually, dalawa yung sinadsad natin. And there were more. Because we wanted to create what you would call outpost, instant outpost, in a place where the Chinese were building structures, permanent structures, that now they have 7 of these with runways and militarized it. And they are inside our exclusive economic zone. So does that mean we are giving up? We will practically give up if we do not, if we are not there. Tatlong paraan yan for a country to get additional territory. Annexation, especially if it's contiguous. Sale, like Russia sold Alaska to the United States. And effective occupation. Doon tayo dinadali sa effective occupation.
sir?
Oh, yeah. So, I think in the case of China, we have to understand their national psyche. China has been a country that was dominated by foreign powers for quite some time. They were colonized. And in their thinking, the Americans want to contain them. Okay. So, literally, they're not really after us, but because we are strategically located, they have to contend with us. But in reality, much of our relationship and trade depends on China. Now, I also agree with the position of Senator Mercado. As far as China is concerned, you have to come up with a national united stand. History have shown that the Vietnamese stood up against China. In fact, they had an armed confrontation. Yet if you look at trade, they received more than the Philippines.
Yes.
And I guess their national psyche is, if you're a country that does not stand up for your sovereign rights, they won't respect you. So I think China will not go to war with us, but it's important that we stand up and show a credible defense posture. And that requires, when you talk about things like this and you have several dissents, that's where China comes in and weaken our resolve as a nation.
Ano,
Dagdag ko lang sa sentence. No? When, during our time, I characterized what China was doing as creeping invasion. Now, we are already in an age where we are being forced or maneuvered into accepting these things as part and parcel of our
Normalize.
normal life, which is not correct. So I think we should really rally our people behind the government. Its position is strong, and we should show our government that we're behind it. We're behind it. And as a consequence, that's why I'm not saying let's not debate. Let's debate it within ourselves. But when a decision has been made already by the government and the president articulates it, I think it requires our full support.
Yes. Sorry,
Yeah,
anything to
I
add?
will support an expert like Orly. He has already set the strategic directions with which we should be able to manage and deal with China. What I can only add would be that, you know, Vietnam, which has been mentioned, is following what we call a bamboo diplomacy, where they're all
With
friends
everybody.
with everyone, China, US even, and they're getting support from everyone. So it could be one of those ideas that we should try to strategically, appreciate. But I don't know if that's the direction of the president. So that's what I can add to
Yeah.
the discussion.
Well, I think we've run out of time, gentlemen. It's
Okay.
been a pleasure talking to you. I have a lot more questions actually, pero ubus na ang oras natin. Again, thank you very much for attending for joining the Manila Times forum on and coverage for the President Marcos's SONA, and it would be very good to see you again some other time. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Okay. That ends our panel discussion on President Marcos's expectations for President Marcos's SONA. Thank you very much for joining the Times, and we'll see you again next year.